Hello, I'm Kay Leech, and I started as an embroiderer doing City and Guilds certificate and diploma in embroidery up until 2014. But then as I was developing, I was finding more and more that I was using quilting, and I joined a group called Northern Threads over in the northeast, and a lot of those people were quilters. So I found myself more and more fascinated by quilting and patchwork, so decided to do the patchwork and quilting diploma, which I started in 2019 with Gillian Cooper up in Scotland. And you would think, because of doing two City and Guilds diplomas, that it is repeating, but actually it's just building on the knowledge, and it's been fantastic to use the skills that I'd learned from the embroidery and then add to them now with the quilting. And my inspiration is Cumbria, where I live, and walking, and the two things are very much intertwined in my work. We go out fell walking every week. My husband collects rocks and minerals, and so we go out visiting mines, and I'm collecting bits of old rusty metal and bits of rock, and that all helps me to design my work. And the pieces that are here for this exhibition are based on the Wainwright books. So Wainwright wrote the books about walking the fells in Cumbria, and there are 7 books, so there are 7 panels, one for each of the books, and they are not trying to actually show you what the hills look like. That's not a true representation. They're my feelings about the fells, and a particular 1 or 2 walks combined. So they include words about the weather, the fell tops that we actually walked on those days, and there's also, running round the whole works is a layer of organza which has words which with a stream of consciousness. So it's all about plodding onwards step by step and about making it to the top of the fells, and it runs round joining up the 7 pieces. So all the pieces are hand dyed or painted, printed fabrics that I've done, and the palette that I use is very much influenced by what I see around on the fells. So it's Cumbria, so a lot of the colours often are quite muted, the soft greys and misty colours, blues. We do sometimes get some bright sunshine and bright blue skies, but a lot of it tends to be a much more muted palette. And then it runs through the sort of greens and the rusty colours when you get the bracken. Sometimes some bright colours, you'll get a shaft of sunlight coming through, and it'll just illuminate a field which will absolutely be lime green and strongly coloured, or make the bracken glow. Purples as the heather is coming into flower now, soft pinks with foxgloves, and actually one of the things I've got to do for having won the award is to develop my work and come back next year, and I'm kind of thinking of a series of pieces which reflect the flowers that we're seeing, so the orchids and foxgloves, and incorporating those into pieces of work for the next sort of development. So I tend to use natural materials for dyeing, although some of them are synthetics, particularly for the shears. So using things like Zelon and lightweight Luchador, as well as, but I do also use a sort of a cotton organza. But moving forward, what I want to try and do is to use recycled materials. So I've been given a whole lot of old napkins and tablecloths, and that's one of my next challenges, is dyeing those materials and seeing how I can incorporate those in future pieces. I do dye some threads, but I also do use ones that I've bought as well. I tend to favour variegated threads. I like the fact of the gradual change, but not variegated threads that have a strong change between the colours. It wants to be ones that have a very subtle change between the colours. And I enjoy mixing machine stitch and hand stitch. As I say, I started off doing embroidery, and I think that the rhythm of hand stitch goes with the whole rhythm of walking. It's a very a similar sort of process. So I don't like to call mine actually sketchbooks. On the whole, I think of them as workbooks because I like to do often photographs rather than necessarily a drawing, and then develop a piece of work that's based on a photograph. But it can be a mix of looking for how I'll record textures. But again, I've worked from a photograph that's taken as I've been walking, and then I'll work on them when I'm back at home. I have tried drawing when I'm out on the fells, and I've never done anything that I actually like when I've done that process. I would like to go back to doing a daily sketch. I think it's a really good process to get into, and again, it doesn't have to actually be a sketch. It can be a bit of stitch, and somebody said, and I can't remember who, don't work on a full page. And I love the idea of tearing pages so that you get a whole range of different edges and textures developing. And I did these during lockdown when there wasn't a lot else to do, and then life took over. So it's something that I definitely need to get back to again. Sometimes it's a question of a whole sheet of paper coloured in with different paints. I love using Inktense blocks, and then folded to form a little sketchbook. And then I can just sit and doodle, filling in the gaps and just develop patterns which could become stitch. You can see it's sort of, this could be French knots and running stitch, just filling in areas. And that can lead to how I'll think about filling in a piece on an actual full-size piece of work. I do some workshops with Quirky Workshops in Greystoke, in Cumbria. I've been asked if I'll run some with the Quaker Tapestry in Kendal. And I do workshops for embroiderers groups and quilting groups and talks. Thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed looking at my work.